All right, welcome guys to the second episode of the Tennis Fans podcast. I am Tuck.
And I'm Tree.
So before we get started with this episode, I would like to give a special thank you to Scott and Devi from Toki Tennis. They are providing us with a lot of cute stuff to wear. We were talking to Scott while we were at Indian Wells this past week, and this is what the episode is going to be about most of the time from our trip to Indian Wells.
Yeah, and if you like, very cute sweats, t-shirts, plushie.
Yeah, I think Scott was saying they're coming out with some plushies soon and some other stuff. So keep your eyes peeled on the website, tokitennis.com, if you really like these really cute characters.
Yes, and we'll be sure to put a link to their website in the description.
Yep.
So you can check it out.
All right, well, in order to get started here, I guess we can talk a little bit about like our trip. We stayed, I think, Wednesday and Thursday, March
8th and 9th, the first week of the tournament.
Yeah, it was during the first round. We got to talk to a lot of players.
Yes, but watching a lot of good player practice and seeing how their practice is structured.
Yeah, I think that's pretty important because like you can watch a lot of matches and stuff online, but this is like an experience where like you get to see behind the scenes of how like the players like practice.
Yeah,
and maybe you can even incorporate that into your own. Yeah, which is really cool.
I like going to Indian Wells. I've never been to any of like the 4 Slam before, but I've been to other tournament, right? Like for example, when they host the San Diego Open,
right
here we've been there, but Indian Wells by far is probably in terms of like player closure and watching, practices. I think it's probably the best that I've seen. But that again, I've never been to a slam before, so I don't know what it's like. But Indian Wells is pretty good.
Yeah, maybe we can kind of talk about our experience, like doing some pretty unordinary things at these tournaments. I think a lot of these players, like, they every day, like, they get a lot of fans that come up and, giving them like stuff to autograph, and it's like this like same old sort of thing. The first year we went to, I think Indian Wells, or no, I think it started with SD Open first, right?
Yeah, SD Open first in 2021, and the reason why they have like the San Diego Open is because it was during the pandemic year, right? Well, the year after the pandemic, a lot of tournaments get canceled. So one of the tournaments that was canceled was in, I believe, in China. So They replaced those tournaments with San Diego. So they decided to host the San Diego Open in October of 2021.
And I think it's like the perfect time for them too, because like right after that, they would just make their way up to Indian Wells, because it was a kind of a special year because Indian Wells was held in October, I believe.
Yeah, it got pushed
that year.
Yeah,
and so after that tournament, they would just drive all the way to Indian Wells and just have it there.
Yeah.
That was personally like my first experience watching like a pro match, or like just watching pros in general. It was crazy because like we can kind of talk about it again. Like we've talked about this before. Like the first moment we walked through the door, the gates at SD Open Barnes Tennis Center, we encountered Fabio Fognini just on the side.
Yeah.
And like I just never thought that I would be able to kind of just see something like that in real life. It just kind of felt pretty unreal at the time.
Yeah. And let me tell you this, haven't been at Indian Wells. Well, you never seen professional tennis up until 2021 in person.
Right.
But I've seen it before. I've been to Indian Wells since in 2009, and I can tell you that experience that we had in San Diego Open in 2021 was nothing in terms of like player closure. Was never been before for me. Like it was really close, just because it was that first year. How they in San Diego, they didn't know how they organize it, right?
Right.
So like player was just walking around, and we walked into the facility, and we saw Fabio Fognini just literally walking around on the phone, no no barriers,
no like security
no
or
security
anything.
whatsoever.
Right.
It was so funny, but yeah, after that it went kind of downhill. In 2022, it's not so great, but yeah.
Yeah. Like I mean, we got to meet like not personally meet or anything, but we got to see Kei Nishikori,
Yeah,
like all these really cool like players. I mean, we even got to see Michael Chang, which
Yeah.
is really cool. Tommy Paul,
Tommy Paul.
got a picture with him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think those were some pretty cool experiences, and I think once we hit that first Indian Wells, at least for my first Indian Wells, was just like the one following the SD Open, is when you started to kind of like think of like some crazy stuff to do, I guess.
Yeah, I agree.
And I guess, you know, just to kind of preface it, like you wanted to print this picture of Tsitsipas.
Oh yeah, that's right. So it was also in 2021, like he said, it was we they had the San Diego Open as a prep tournament for Indian Wells because Indian Wells got pushed back. So I was able to get this picture printed out and signed by Tsitsipas that in that exact tournament. And it was not well, in a way it was kind of half planned. I was always going to have this printed out, but just kind of taking a risk and then just bringing it to the tournament and have him sign it was good.
Yeah. Well, I think like, it was definitely like a huge risk because like you didn't even like plan on bringing it in. Like you brought it with us, but eventually you just kind of brought it with like everybody kind of just swarmed around this thing. Like I remember it was almost like they've never seen it before. It was kind of like something ridiculous. Like,
yes, I mean it would be hard to believe, right? Because obviously I expected that it would get a lot of attention,
right?
But my intention was that I just want to have him sign this. You know, like I didn't care about like what everybody else think. I just wanted him to sign it. But I bring it in and I open it, and then it's just people keep looking at it. I felt embarrassed, but at the same time, because of the fact that it gains a lot of attention, I was able to get his agent to who happens to stand around right there,
right,
and just basically told me like, look, this is what you print out is pretty cool, and if he doesn't want to sign it, I will make sure that he sign it. So remember we were kind of down because at one point he just walked by us. Yeah. And he didn't even like, he looked at it all weird and he just like kind of keep walking.
There's a picture online of that. Like there's literally an exact moment where he looked at that poster and he was just like, what the heck am I looking
like, what
at?
the heck? What is this? And then I was like, dang it. And that whole entire week, he was not signing anything. Right. Because of like the COVID thing, that he was like, oh, I don't want to sign anything. And then he walked by. I'm like, okay, there's no chance he's signing it, but at least we gave it a shot. But then all of a sudden, like the agent called his dad, and we were sitting here all disappointed. And then all of a sudden, his dad looked at us, gave a thumbs up, and I was like, no, thumbs down. I gave his dad a thumbs down. I'm like, no, there's no way he's gonna sign this. And then he walked out and then started signing it. There's a video of it, right? Like you say, yeah, it's pretty video online, pretty cool.
And so like that was the start of us kind of like. Because these players, like I said before, like they get a whole like thousands and hundreds of thousands of fans that come out and they, you know, like get these pictures signed and all that stuff. They get their balls signed. Like we needed something a little bit crazy, to kind of catch their attention. And so that was the point where we kept brainstorming these sort of ideas in order to get their attention better.
Yeah.
And I mean, in that same tournament, like in that same Indian Wells, like we decided something else, and that was with Jannik Sinner.
Yeah, same exactly.
Yeah, and so I mean, that was just purely a coincidence as well, just because that year I think it was Emma Raducanu. She was the big thing at the time. Yeah, she just came fresh from winning the U.S. Open. Yeah. And it just so happens that she was playing a match during the exact same time that Jannik Sinner was practicing.
Yeah, so it drew a lot of crowd over to the stadium that she was playing.
And we were literally maybe like the second, like, or maybe like two, like there was two other people that were there that was watching him. And so, you know, Long was with us at the time and he called us and he was like, hey, like, are you guys hungry? Like, do you want some pizza? And I think at that point, like, I don't know, like, we were just like, what if we just use the pizza that Long's buying and just offered it to Jannik Sinner
Yeah.
in the hopes that, like, it's something funny
Yeah.
to catch his attention.
Yeah.
And it did.
Yeah. And he was very nice about it too. He declined to eat it in a very respectful manner.
And he's genuinely a super, super, super nice guy.
Yeah, he is.
And he's proven that because now I think two Indian wells now, like with this one as counting this one, we decided to kind of keep it the tradition and just do the same thing.
Yeah.
And just buy, like, I bought him pizza again last year and he still remembered us. And then we did it again this year. And so, with this, like, we decided, hey, like, why not take this chance, with this new podcast on the way? Maybe ask him a few questions and maybe ask him other players a few questions as well. And so, like, the question that we decided to go with this time, and withdrawing attention with the whole pizza thing, we decided to ask him, or just ask a lot of, like, the ATP players and maybe some of the WTA players as well, like how they handle pressure during a match. And we got some pretty good footage for sure, and maybe we can watch it right now and just, like, kind of dissect it a little bit here. So this is gonna be Jannik first. How do you handle the pressure when you're when you're playing a match?
Just focusing about yourself. That's the most important, because if you start to think about other stuff, it's tough, no?
Okay.
And obviously you have to stay in the present moment.
Right.
That's my way, and everyone is different.
And what's your favorite Eminem song?
Eminem song.
Yeah.
Oh, Lose Yourself.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good. Yeah, I had to squeeze a little funny question near the end because just to kind of lighten the mood a little bit. But I think, like, what he's saying is pretty good actually, because sometimes we really get caught up in, like, the little mistakes that we make, and it's good during a match, or, like, especially under pressure, to take a step back and just stay in the moment a little bit and not think too far in the past and also too far into the future.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's take a look here. We actually got a response from Yoshihito Nishioka as well.
Much pressure?
Yes.
Well, this is usually always happen, right?
Yes.
So I don't have that much pressure like every matches, but when I got a feeling so tight, I always showing more emotions. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I actually really like that. That's like a kind of a different perspective.
Yeah.
Because he's saying he's trying to show more emotions in order to become the pressure for the other player, I think, is, if I'm understanding that correctly.
And it goes back to exactly what Jannik was saying, is different people have a different way of handling pressure. With Jannik, you can see during matches he's very reserved, very control of himself, and that works for him because you don't really show any kind of weakness. You don't show that you're being bothered by anything. But then for a player like Yoshihito Nishioka, he wants to express his emotion in order to play better. So it really, really depends on the person and how you really handle those moments. But it's really good to see kind of what Jannik was saying and what Yoshihito was saying.
Yeah, it's definitely a good contrast between the two players.
Yes.
Here is one from Xinyu Wang.
Xinyu Wang, yeah. She's number 62 in the world, I believe. Yeah, so she's...
I think the last time I checked, I think she went up a little bit.
She went up a little bit. She did really well in this tournament. She lost in the third round, but that's really, really well done.
Situation.
Just Like,
Depends on how you look at it. I mean, pressure can be like a lot on you, but also if you think of it like a motivation.
yes,
I think that's how I look at it.
that's good. Hey, good luck.
I think she's saying here is like you can use the pressure as a motivation for you to push through the match.
Yeah, motivation. I think it's a very interesting way of looking at it as well, because I think when you look at it in a positive manner, I think you play better as well. So I think that's a very good response.
Yeah, because like if you kind of think of it in like the the normal way that I guess people would look at it, not normal, but like typically people would think of pressure in the negative sense, like, oh, I'm gonna crack under pressure and all that stuff. But with her, like the way that she's looking at it, she's using that pressure as a way to kind of push herself forward and do better.
Yeah, and haven't had the opportunity to play with like a lot of recreational players in our tennis community, as well as through some of my colleagues that I play tennis with. I think at our level, a lot of the time we get really hung up on the very specific thing. So, for example, if you're having a bad day and your backhand may not be working as well as you want it to be, you're really focusing on, I'm not playing well because my backhand, or I'm not playing well because I'm not moving my feet, I'm not playing well. I think it's good that you recognize that, but in this situation, like having seen their responses, they don't really say, I'm trying to deal with the pressure by looking at the technical stuff. I'm dealing with it in a different way rather than looking at the specific technical thing.
Right.
So I think it makes a lot of sense that way as well.
Yeah.
How are you handling pressure during tennis match? Just from my experience.
I don't know what to tell you. No.
Because you've been in a Grand Slam final, you win.
I get it as well. But even if I look calm, I'm not pressed. You just have to be aware and more focused on the things that you do and how you do things, and it helps you perform better. If you're thinking about stuff,
Yes.
when you're expecting the outcome without even trying to do something to be good. But I think it's crucial also to acknowledge the
Yes.
if you're trying to escape and say, oh, I don't feel pressure, that's what
It's embracing the pressure.
embracing the pressure, but
Thank you, Nicola.
So I mean, not a lot of people are familiar with this player. Can you give a little bit of a background on who this player is?
Yeah, so that's his name is Nikola Metic.
Yeah.
He's one of the top doubles player in the world. He's been in a few Grand Slam final and he won one. Very good doubles player. So it was very good moment that we were able to caught up with him as he was walking to the practice court.
Right.
Yeah.
And I really like what he's trying to say here.
Yeah.
Because he's saying not to expect some sort of outcome.
Yeah.
He's saying that you should try to do something in the moment and do what you need to do in order, to get the outcome that you want, but don't expect a certain outcome.
Right. That's very good actually.
Focusing on objectives.
Yeah.
That you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, because a lot of the time, you have like this. When we talk about pressure, it's kind of funny because I've been in a lot of situation where I'm leading during the match and I'm leading during games, like 40-love or 5-2, and all of a sudden I find myself at deuce, or all of a sudden I find myself at 5-5 during the set. And right. I was like, how did that happen? And you have like these little doubt that creeps into your mind, like, oh, even when you're playing too well, you're like, oh, I'm playing so well. Like, can I keep this going? Right. And the moment you start having those doubt, that's when the pressure start coming in. Right. And then you start feel tighten up and those kind of things. That's I believe that's what he was saying, is don't focus on so much on the outcome. Right. Just continue to focus on what you can do to control the outcome.
Right.
That's what I do a lot of the time. So I think that's really good advice on him. Like, don't ever. That's at least that's how I interpreted it to be, is that when you're doing something well, don't have any self-doubt, or even when things go wrong, don't doubt yourself as well. Just continue to do exactly what you're doing. You put in the hard work. Now it's gonna pay off, and continue
Right.
to focus on what you can control.
Right.
So yeah, that's how I
And I think
see
that
it.
goes into like the adaptability of like the game as well. Like, my first tournament, like probably 2020 when I first played? No, it was 2021.
Yeah.
I played my first tournament at La Jolla, and it was against this kid, and I thought I played decent in the first set, and I was able to take the first set. And I think what happened there, I ended up losing the match, but what happened there was like, I felt pretty good in the moment, like with taking the first set, and then, after that, I was just like, I expected to be able to kind of do the same thing,
Yeah.
but and kind of lost focus a little bit there.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to, like, I still played the same type of game. It's just that I lost focus and forgot to kind of readjust myself and try to, because he, like, at this point, he's going to be thinking about like, how am I going to try to beat this guy? So he's adjusting his game and in order to try to beat me.
Yeah.
And that's how he's able to take, like, the last two sets. But like, I lost focus because, I was expecting some sort of outcome after that, for taking that first set. And so I think it's what the lesson learned there is like, just focus on what you needed to do, especially like, what you learned during practice and stuff.
Yeah.
And, play your game, but just don't lose focus. I mean, that's like the toughest thing, because like, that happens to the best of us, and maybe even the pros as well sometimes.
Yeah, I think, and this is kind of connect to it, is how well you handle pressure, control how the momentum is on your side. And
Right.
a lot of people who plays a lot of tennis may know this, but momentum in tennis is so important.
Yeah.
Like when you watch like professional matches, and also when you play a match yourself, you can sense momentum being shifted back and forth. It's very easy to recognize that. For example, you
Yep.
play really well, all of a sudden you shank a backhand,
Right.
and then you start having that self-doubt,
Yep.
and then you're like, oh my gosh, I just shanked that backhand. Is it possible that it can happen again?
Yep.
And when you have that momentum, that doubt creeps in, the momentum then shift to
Yep.
your opponent. Your opponent recognize that, then now that momentum shift to him. So that's why it's a lot of like the topic is about mental strength. Like, I think it's important to have good mental strength out there. But again, like, really depend on how people handle it, to really try to find a way to maintain your composure and maintain the momentum on your side, because that's most of the time is how you're going to be able to cope. Tennis is a
Right.
game of momentum. It's back and forth, and the people who are able to deal with the mental strength as well as having that momentum on their side is the people who usually prevail at the end of the match.
Yeah, it's really important to be able to keep focused and keep that
Yeah,
level
that
of
level.
tennis
Yes,
up. And
exactly.
it's very easy to say,
Yeah.
obviously, like when you're put in a pressure situation, like
Yeah.
just any matches, it's going to be completely different.
Yeah.
Because we practice so differently than we actually play the match.
Exactly.
Especially you can especially see that with the pros as well. When you watch the pros practice, they hit the ball like crazy. I would say like maybe upwards of like 10 miles an hour faster than what they usually hit
Yeah.
at. When they go onto a
right.
match, it's just like completely strategic. They try to do like they try to keep up the level basically.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you said, it's such a big momentum game.
Yeah, and the thing is, here's another funny thing that I think a lot of people may know as well, is back in like, I would say like 2000, not even like the 1990, like very recently, like 2000, the year 2000, where you have like Federer was still dominating and everything, you see like the player box, right? And you have like your coach who teach you like the technique and like the strategy and all that stuff. And then you have your, how do you say, like your physical fitness.
Right.
You would never realize that nowadays people also have like mental coach
Yeah.
in their boxes.
Yeah.
Like you like Iga Swiatek, she has like a mental coach or like a psychiatrist in her team. And Djokovic, like he doesn't only, like you see him doing stretches, you see him doing yoga, you see him taking care of his body, you see him like doing like physical stuff, but he also meditate and train his mental mind.
Right.
It's so important nowadays to like for you to be able to master that, right?
And I think like the perfect spot to kind of like even get a little tiny glimpse of this is in the documentary we watched, Breakpoint, and they did a pretty good job at like showing like a little bit of like behind the scenes of these players and how they, everybody like has these sort of things when they they think about they're placed under a great ton of like pressure, especially during matches, and we're all human, and so we have to kind of deal with that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I guess for the listeners that aren't too familiar with the game itself, like in tennis, you got to be able to hold your serve. Like that's like a big thing. And the momentum shifts, like when you're not on level ground anymore with the other player is when the other player breaks you, meaning the other player wins the game that you are serving on. And that can put a whole lot of pressure on the player that is serving. And that in itself can cause this whole momentum shift to happen.
Yeah.
Because like at this point you're having a lot of self like doubt.
Yeah.
Like, my serve is not working.
Yeah.
And so, like for me, just speaking from personal experience, I don't have a great serve. It's actually a pretty terrible serve. And so like when I tank my serves, or like when the other person, wins that game that I'm serving on, it's my service game, that's going to throw me off for a loop for sure. And that's what happens with a lot of my matches, is that I'm not able to hold serve. And I think that's, one of the topics that we can kind of get into now is that what do you think is the toughest shot in tennis? Because for me, it's the serve.
Yeah. I was actually like thinking about the backhand smash, because again, like our last episode we were talking about like Federer and how easy he make things look.
Yeah.
When I first watched tennis, I seen Federer hit a lot of these like backhand smash whenever people try to lob him to the backhand, and he would just flick his wrist, and it's like literally like a normal smash.
Like it looks
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
Like it looks like he didn't even try. Like he like sometimes they probably don't even look. Like I see Rafa doing that a lot of the time, and it's just like, and then you like that's the thing we it's like very underappreciated.
Like if you go and you just search Federer backhand smash, like Nadal's backhand smash is pretty good. But if you look at Federer, some of his like backhand smash, like back in the early days, like it's literally like a smash, like a normal smash.
Yeah.
And that's not an easy shot.
Yeah.
I see, like that's it's so funny. Like I'm thinking back on the previous episode, which is when I say like he make things look easy. Like when you actually go out there and you have somebody lob to your backhand and you try to smash it, it's not easy.
Yeah.
So yeah, like that's what that's what I'm thinking. But nevertheless, like I think the serve is definitely I would say is like the most technical. There's a lot more to it because that's how you start the point. And then there's a lot of things that going into it. Your lower body, your upper body, your toss, all of that kind of things. Instead of like just taking back a forehand, hitting it, taking back a backhand, hitting it, there's a lot more to the serve. So yeah.
And I think that's like such an underappreciated thing about like just watching tennis, because like if you only watch tennis, it's like just people like hitting the ball back and forth.
Yeah.
But if you watch him play tennis, you start to really appreciate certain things about it
Yeah.
because you're playing and you're making these mistakes, right? And it's like you know what is really tough, but like these players, like they're making it so easy.
Yeah.
And so for me, like I guess just to kind of get back on track is yeah, it's definitely the serve. Like I've always had like a huge issue with the serve, and I think it's just like due to consistency, like in the motion and everything. And yeah, it's just it's the serve is where how the point starts. If you don't have the serve, then it's just not gonna work.
Yeah. I agree.
And so maybe this leads into, I guess, practicing with sort of an objective, because like a lot of the time, like in our early sort of approach to our practice, we would just kind of hit the ball, right?
Yep.
And our sort of approach now is we want to try to kind of be strategic and be more productive in how we want to, I guess, yeah, be productive of our hitting sessions. Like, and so like we drew a lot of our inspiration, especially, I mean, from like coaches and stuff, but then also, you know, from this past week, we were going to Indian Wells and trying to see like, how do these players practice? And, you know, like when we were watching them, you know, they had all these sort of like specific goals, specific shots that they were working on. And so like, it's very important to be able to kind of set those objectives so then we can kind of get better that way. Because if, you know, we hit the ball and just rally, which is good. I mean, it helps on like consistency and everything. Like, but eventually, like we have to kind of work towards something, because like tennis is not all about like hitting cross court and whatnot. And yeah, it's so whenever we get to like that foreign land where, you know, we're not too familiar with a certain shot, that's why we need to practice those specific
Yeah.
shots.
Yeah, I mean, it's right? Like, when you go out there and like what we've been doing the last year or so, which is, it's still good. It's just hitting down the middle.
Yeah.
But over time, like when you actually go into matches, not a lot of people like hit down the middle to you. Like they mostly like try to run you around.
Right.
And like make you, you know, go left and go right. And one of those things is like, it's hard if you get in that zone of just hitting down the middle back and forth all the time. You don't really get to explore the different things that you need to be able to do to win points. So we've been doing, we've been implementing a different way of practicing, right?
Yeah.
And I would say it's been working out pretty well. Is we'll have maybe spend the first 10 minutes just hitting down the middle just to get warm up. And then after that, we'll go cross court to the forehand to forehand, and then cross court, backhand to backhand, and just exploring the different type of angles and ball that we can hit, that we then can gain certain shot that we were not able to hit before. So
Right.
I think that's like practicing with objective is kind of varies between how people wants to do it, but the very basic and the very core thing I want to keep in mind is to go out there and have the specific things that you want to work on.
Yeah, and I think it just comes down to like this helps a lot in terms of our game, because it's like repetitions. If you're able to kind of just reproduce these sort of shots,
Yeah.
this is just going down like the very foundational stuff, like hitting cross court and stuff. That's very foundation. We go to like Indian Wells and stuff, and we see these players practice very specific shots, and that's something, you know, we'll eventually go down the line and, you know, try to practice different shots.
Yeah.
But that's what I was saying. Like we need to practice these foundational stuff,
Yeah.
and like really like focus in on that.
Yeah, I think the most important thing for the people who are watching this is like we're not telling everybody to go to Indian Wells,
Yeah.
watch the practice, and then go home and do exactly like what those guys were
No.
practicing. Like,
No.
right? Like, I think the message is, if you want to get better, you have to have a specific objective of what you want to work on. You go out there and you say, today I want to work on hitting a high forehand.
Yeah.
Then you just spend maybe like 15, 20 minutes after you get warm up, just practicing, have somebody feed you ball of like high forehand, and you're just practicing on that specific shot, because there's so many different type of shot in tennis you can practice on, and having that objective every single session is going to make you feel better, and showing that you are working on a specific thing.
Yeah.
Is what I think is the best way to go about it. Because now, I mean, it's something that we should have realized much earlier, but I think it's fine. Like, again, but I think it's much better for you to go out there and spend an hour to practice on the shot that you want to get better at, than going out there and play around or just hitting down the middle for like 2 hours and really doesn't really get anything besides like cardio.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's very something like going back to the basics like this is very important for me too, because as a player that's starting fresh again, basically, yeah, starting very, very fresh, like I need to kind of go back to the basics and just hitting cross court, forehand. Like once we finish with that, we take it step by step and just kind of do that, like go backhand to backhand, down the line, all that stuff. And then we start incorporating them together. And now, you know, we've gotten a little bit further in terms of our progression.
Exactly.
And mind you, like before this, we spend a whole lot of time out there at the courts. I would say like a good maybe 3 hours every day, 6-7 days a week. You know, we've gotten a lot better, for sure, like in terms of just hitting. But I think now with this, it will kind of further our game a little bit more, just because now we have certain objectives that we need to kind of like achieve. And I think this all stems from, you know, just again like the community that we were able to get to meet out there, you know, with all the coaches and stuff. Like fortunately, we have some pretty, you know, pretty credible people that we're able to talk to and give us advice, and they are the ones that are kind of like, hey, maybe you guys need to kind of take a different approach to your practices and try to be more productive. You know, like I think that's really good that we have people like that to kind of just look at us and say, you know, that's just you guys put in your time. Like we definitely put in our time, that's for sure. But putting our time towards something that will benefit us, like that's something that they were able to provide us with.
Yeah, I agree.
And this leads to, you know, again, like with the people that we've met and them providing us with very, very useful advice, that's for sure. And it's helped us improve our game quite a lot. And you know, getting advice from like different people, I guess, like maybe you can kind of explain it a little bit more.
Yeah, like getting advice from different people. I would say it's kind of going back again, like to the last episode where we talked about like how people are different and they have a different way of playing. It's kind of apply here is that you have to be able to have that selective mindset of understanding what information being fed to you is going to be effective.
Right.
Like you cannot just go out there and listen to everybody, right? Because that's just an overload of information. You won't be able to process it. Even, and I guess like that's why it's good to have so many coaches out there to help us, because in a way it's better to have a bunch of information dumped over you and then you're just kind of like intake it and then really pick out bits and pieces to really improve your game. And the more you listen to these advices day over day, the more you picked up and the more you apply to it.
Right.
And then you will be able to see, and then you'll be able to try it, right? A lot of people, I would say, and it's totally fine, like they would think I shouldn't try everything, because if I try it, it's gonna mess with my technique, or it's gonna mess with me and everything. I think the most important thing for me that helps me improve thus far is to be able to give it a shot, to be able to try different things.
Yeah.
And if you don't, for me personally, I feel like you have to be uncomfortable experiencing like right, like it goes to a saying that a lot of people know is the definition of insanity is you keep doing the same thing over and over again but expecting a different result.
Yeah.
So if you want to improve, you have to be uncomfortable. You have to try different things, even if it feels weird at first. Over time, it's gonna feels right.
Yeah.
And if people are telling you, oh, like you should try this, yes, take it into consideration. If it doesn't work and you feel strange and it hurts your hand, then yes, maybe it's not the right thing for you. But that's what I know. That's how I think about receiving feedback from different people. So take the little things here and there, apply to your game. Feel uncomfortable at first, but then eventually you're gonna feel better.
I agree. Yeah, like especially when I think the idea that when you're in an uncomfortable situation is where you're gonna be doing a whole lot of growing. Like if you're kind of stagnant and you're like comfortable, that's maybe like it works for some people, but like I think it's definitely, you will definitely be doing a lot of more growing when you're put under like a more uncomfortable situation.
Yeah.
And so like you know going back, like there's a whole lot of, because I'm a fresh player, and so I'm just trying to like soak in everything as much as I can right now, especially like when I'm first starting out. Like you can see in the videos and stuff, like my backhand has changed quite a bit. And I think that's where embracing that discomfort, sorry, but yeah, embracing the discomfort and the change that you need to make in order to improve.
Yeah, because I remember, right, like you started out with a one-handed backhand. You wanted to hit a one-hand backhand, and then you were on the what is it? Is it the Eastern grip?
Yeah, I think so. It was something really extreme.
You originally started out on the Eastern grip, and then one day we start hitting with this guy who now moved to Chicago, and he was like, "No, you should, like the way I hit my backhand is."
Oh yeah, that's right. I
hold the grip over all the way to the Western, super Western.
Right.
And then you're like, oh, that's strange. But you were able to like, hey, if I want to get better, maybe I should listen to him.
Right.
And you master it, and you were playing really well with it for a while.
Right.
But then it gave, like, over time, I think you got used to it for like a solid 6 months or something.
Yeah.
But then you developed this hick where you went over too much. That sometimes when you hit over the ball, it just literally bounces before it hit the net.
Right.
And then you talk to, like, and then Xavier was like, hey, maybe like you should try to switch it back, and then you were able to adapt it back. So
right.
that's an example. Like it definitely didn't make you a worse player, right?
Yeah.
Like it makes you better, and you're able to try to do different things.
It definitely takes time to readjust.
Yeah.
Like you are gonna be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
No matter what, because you're making a change. But you just gotta embrace the change and just go with it sometimes. You gotta trust in your body, because like you can't just be like, oh, it doesn't work. Like I'm just gonna totally dismiss the advice.
Yeah.
Like my body just doesn't move that way. No, you need to try it, like, and really, really try. Like really put in your effort to try whatever the advice is given to you. If that doesn't work, after 2-3 months, then let's okay, revert back. But and that's where you need to be able to pick and choose what works for your body. What someone says to you could not work, or could not work.
Yeah.
And so like it's good to sometimes also take a step back, I think, because sometimes people would say completely opposite things. Like let's say, for example, like Hector and Xavier. Today it was very interesting. Just the other day, Hector was saying, shorten up your take back a little bit, keep it a little bit lower, and don't do something so extreme. And today Xavier told me, earlier, that I should take have the take back be a little bit higher and also a little bit further back. And you can kind of see like the contrast in like the different teaching style, and that's totally completely fine. Like it works for some, like for certain people, because you know they're built a certain way, and it's definitely useful to try to just be able to just try it out and see if it works for you. But taking a step back, right? Like, what's the idea here?
Yeah.
Like, you gotta just take a step back. It's like, why are they telling me to do these certain things? Why did Hector tell me to shorten up my swing? Why did Xavier tell me to lengthen it and take it higher? Lengthening it will allow you to drive through the ball a little bit higher. And that's the whole, like, the idea of it. As opposed to Hector, he's saying to shorten it. Taking a step back from that, it just means because I'm usually late.
Yeah.
And so making it shorter will make it a little bit more efficient in terms of the travel distance. And so the idea here is preparation, right? That's a big thing. And so sometimes you just got to be able to kind of pick it out like that. Like, not technically, like you don't have to go technique wise. Just get the whole, like the general idea of what you're trying to achieve here.
Yeah.
And I think like it's really useful to have those two sort of like sort of advices, because then you're able to kind of draw from like your mistakes, like, okay, this is what I'm doing wrong.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. So this was this week's episode. I think this was great because we got a little bit got to show a little bit of like the, I guess, how the pros play, which is really cool. Like how they think a little bit, and how they think during the matches, and relating that to our own experiences on the court as well.
Yeah, I agree.
Before we end it off, I guess we'd like to also give our thanks again to Toki Tennis.
Yeah. Scott and Devi are super nice. They recognized us. I remember in 2021.
Yeah.
That's when we last year, 2022.
Yeah.
Was when we first met them, and they were, very welcoming and very open to like, hey, give us the free T-shirt and everything like that. So not only is it a very cute brand,
Yeah.
but there are some very passionate people.
Yeah.
They truly love the sport and really want the sport to do well behind the scenes. So definitely check out their story.
No, they're super genuine people. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And like it's just a pleasure to have them, especially in the tennis community. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah. Well, this has been the episode 2 of the Tennis Phans podcast. I hope you guys have a wonderful and smashing week up ahead. And signing out. This has been Tuck.
And this is Tree. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.